I'm not sure what to make of this bare knuckle fighting championships business. I mean, I'm obviously a diehard MMA fan. I've also always been a really big fan of professional kickboxing. I never really got into boxing, not because it's not fantastic, it's just one of those things. I never really got into the sport itself. But while I was never into the sport of boxing, I've always had an immense appreciation for the sweet science. I love the technical aspect of it, and I've always had intentions on getting into it and paying a lot more attention to it. But for whatever reason, bare knuckle fighting is not drawing me in. I suppose the obvious reasons as to why would be that the optics of it are kind of rough. But even with matchups like Chris Lieben versus Phil Baroni competing under these rules, which I thought that would be something that I would never miss for anything, when the time came for the event, I just wasn't inclined to commit to watching it. If I'm being honest, I would say I'm almost repelled by it. I used to be all about Joe Rogan's idea of removing gloves altogether from MMA. The wrapping of the wrists and the hands and the knuckles, only to be padded again by a 4-ounce glove, most definitely gives an unrealistic sturdiness and hardness to the fist and allows punches to be thrown with far greater force as opposed to bare knuckle. The argument could be made that in bare knuckle fighting, they're dealing with a lot less trauma, given fighters have to be much more controlled with the power that they're using to avoid breaking their hands off on people's foreheads. But again, those optics. I'm not so sure I'm good with the idea of no gloves in MMA anymore. Maybe fighters aren't dealing with as much blunt force trauma, but the intense lacerations and the extensive swelling, I'm just not sure that it's not another type of trauma that's equally as dangerous that these fighters are dealing with. I just find it hard to watch, and I've yet to even give it a fair shake. I say it's hard to watch, but the reality is I've only ever seen short video clips from the events. But the thing is, I can't help but be somewhat intrigued with this Paulie Malignaggi versus Artem Lobov fight set for this weekend, even if I don't want to admit it. Needless to say, on paper it's Paulie's fight to lose. The level of boxing skill in pro boxing is way higher level than you see in even the highest level of MMA fighting. Malignaggi is a decorated boxing champion, and Artem Lobov is an MMA fighter with a losing record, which is essentially unheard of in pro MMA. And that's not a knock on Lobov, it's just the reality of the situation. But I can't help it. I'm a total sucker. I can't help but focus on the X factor that is, this is not a typical boxing contest. The removal of the gloves changes everything. The rule set of the allowance of some clinching in play changes everything again. In the fight game, you always have to be prepared to be shocked. It's just when you're certain an outcome of a fight is a foregone conclusion that we get a reminder of how crazy this combat sports thing is. I'm not prepared to claim that Lobov is going to win this fight, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he's at the very least going to make it really interesting. If history is any indicator, I could still chicken out yet and end up avoiding this event, but the lure of bare knuckle boxing is starting to pull me in.